And this is the Peace Corps informational session. So this session is meant to assist students live in this moment, as well as we'll be recording the session and sending it out to our consortium throughout the state. So the first thing that I would like to do is welcome everybody to this session. As we just talked about, if you have any questions throughout the session, if you go ahead and either put those in the chat or enable your camera and kind of let us know that you have those questions, we're going to be happy to take questions. We hope that this can be an interactive session so that you can get out of this information what you need to get out of it. But with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce George Mccaffrey, who is going to talk to you about the Peace Corps and just give a little bit more information. So go ahead and take it away, George.
Okay, hi. Like I said, and I see somebody that I already know. Hello, Ozzy. Nice to see you there. George Mccaffrey, and I served in the Peace Corps from 2017 to 2019 with my wife, and we served in rural Southeast Asia. We are going to start this off, however, with a short video. So this is a volunteer teaching all girls in the morning. Here in the afternoon, he's teaching local adults about hygiene and the community. Switching roles, he's going over to be working as a water engineer.
Hey, buenas tardes. So please take a look at the 6 sectors. 97% of the volunteers are young. 3% are seniors, like my wife and I, and we went in at the age of 60, and I'm a retired public school teacher, and I worked in education, training teachers and also teaching in a school. Many people are in the sector of education. People with specialty background often do agriculture or the environment or one of these other sectors. This is where, yes, go ahead.
How would a student know what is the best track for them? If they go on the website, does it provide some parameters as to kind of the experience and skills that would be needed?
The best way is actually to talk with me, and I'll put in my information. Actually, I put it in the chat box already. Your understanding of what the Peace Corps is all about goes up tremendously when you talk with someone like me, because we've been there, and then there are English majors who end up working in agriculture just because of the skill set. Maybe they've done a lot of gardening, and they end up in East Africa working in agriculture or fish farming. So really nothing beats getting on the phone with someone like me. And again, you can see the information posted, and Stacy just reposted it. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely. And one follow-up real quick. What do you have to know foreign language for all of these tracks, or are there certain tracks where foreign language would be required?
So you do not need to know foreign language going in. For Latin America, most of the volunteers going to Latin America speak Spanish or have some background in Spanish. However, it is not an absolute requirement, depending on the position. Often when we are in these countries, we are working with local indigenous populations, and you will be learning one of their languages, a mountain language. So we do 3 months of intensive training. It's like about 4 semesters crammed into 3 months. And you're living with a host family, so pretty much 24/7 you were surrounded by that language, and you start dreaming in the language. So, you know, and we don't expect people who are going to East Africa to speak Swahili or into Cambodian to the local languages there. Thank you. All right, so these are the 61 countries. China has been taken off the list, and we will not be returning to China once COVID-19 breaks. We got the news yesterday that we were re-entering our first country in the Caribbean in January. So it's a trickle at first, but we've had over 7,000 volunteers in the field, and the plan is to go back to all 60 plus countries. Any questions about the countries?
George, I have a quick question. This is Jason from Cornell, and please excuse my video not being on. It's my current internet connection doesn't really work well with video, so please pardon that.
Gotcha.
But when you say re-entering a country in the Caribbean, is that like a historical re-entry, or is that just re-entry due to COVID? Like this is just kind of kicking off again?
This is re-entry due to COVID. So this is not a historical re-entry. That being some countries we were in for 20, 30 years and then stopped being in, and then we re-entered. That's a historical re-entry. This is our first country back in post-COVID. Not that COVID's over, but the country's clean, and we will quarantine our volunteers 2 weeks before they get on the plane, test them after they get off the plane, and then there's a 2-week quarantine period when they get off the plane in the Caribbean.
Okay, great. Thank you. And which country is that?
Santa Lucia. Good. Other questions, please, in the chat box or from students?
Georgia, how does the Peace Corps, and I don't know if the students would have this question, but I certainly know probably their parents and their family would have this question. How does the Peace Corps ensure a volunteer safety while they're serving?
So volunteer safety is the #1 priority of the Peace Corps, and sites are checked out, countries are checked out. We have epidemiologists on staff and local safety experts. And then there's, in that 3 months of training, there's 4 hours of language training and then 4 hours of cultural competency. That said, it is also in the best interests of the volunteer to take all those lessons to heart and follow those instructions. And the most successful volunteers do that, and they adjust to the local environment and are generally safe. But excellent question, and it's actually why I took this role. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I think it's super important to impart that message. That I've talked with many people who have had successful careers in the State Department or professors, and they talk about the measures they took in order to stay safe and have a successful experience, because they knew that it would lead to other things. And it is a sacrifice. Some people, um, a diplomat told me that 30 years ago when she was a volunteer, she stayed inside from dusk till dawn every day because that was what was appropriate for women in her culture. And she was willing to make that sacrifice and knew that it had to be done. So thank you for that question, Stacy. If there are no other questions, we will go on. Many volunteers have questions about what a house looks like where they live, and just sort of, I'm going to show you just parts of this. This is pretty neat. You have to read the subtitles because she speaks the whole time in the local language in Zambia. The volunteers. This is a minute. So you can tell that there's significant difference between her experience and where she lived and the first video. Hers is much more rustic and outdoor shower with unheated water. So this is me, and my wife and I served in rural Thailand, and my main project was education, but I did a lot on motorcycle safety, and I started a daily television broadcast. Here is the bathroom of the school where I taught. My wife with some of her students, people in our village. There are different projects that Peace Corps works. This is all about girls' education. I'm going to stop this here, but I studied development economics at Berkeley, and one of the things that the conclusions I came to, it's development is all about girls and girls' education. A girl with a high school education has, on average in the developing world, 5 fewer children than a girl without education. So it's a huge impact. And any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box.
George, I have a quick question, and there is one more in the chat, so we can cover both of those. if a person as a Peace Corps volunteer is sent to a location, generally, are there other Peace Corps volunteers within that area, or would they be working completely on their own?
There's an answer before and after COVID-19 or before it happened. Usually beforehand, about a half an hour away or an hour away by bus was the next volunteer, sometimes closer than that and sometimes farther than that. But our re-entry, we are going to keep people closer to the capital in order for medical care. So it's much more likely that you will be posted near other volunteers and have that support system. Good.
Okay.
And I see the question, yes, help with student aid. If you have public loans, they can be deferred, in some cases up to 70% canceled. The deferment is while you're in the Peace Corps, you don't have to pay them off until you return, and the cancellation is for those you need to make arrangements with the lender, the public lender, to say a Perkins loan that you are going into the Peace Corps. Any other questions on that? It can be a big advantage. Some people get 50% of their loans canceled. So these are some of my students. Here's in my village. Here's a volunteer in East Europe. We are, Stacy, do you think I should show this video on the training or get on to other things? It's up to you.
I think let's go ahead. Is this video available on the Peace Corps website?
If you go to YouTube, Peace Corps, yes, and the YouTube channel of Peace Corps.
YouTube Peace Corps channel. I will find that and I'll put that in the chat.
All right, thank you. Just volunteers around the world. Another video about a house, but we're going to skip this. Here's a volunteer in Africa. During service, we fly you there. You get a living stipend, housing, food from us, medical and dental coverage. We already talked about the loan. 24 days a year of vacation in addition to weekends and holidays, and career skills and training. There's a very diverse population of volunteers. We have first-generation college students and new Americans. We are also going to skip this video, but it shows people go into the Peace Corps as the person they think they are, and then they grow tremendously. Yesterday, there was a webinar with a former volunteer who is now an ambassador, and she talked about the skills that she learned in the Peace Corps in terms of adaptability and being able to roll with many things that allowed her a successful State Department career. And these are just slides of volunteers around the world. There's a first generation friend who served in Zambia, Nirav, others throughout the world. After service, when you get back, we give you, it's now $10,000. This is an old slide. I would like to move to this federal employment advantages. This is, to me, as having worked as a teacher my whole life, the biggest advantage. There are close to 3 million federal government jobs in agencies and sub-agencies and departments and sub-departments you've never heard of. And with this status that you come out with called non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, and Stacy, if you could write that non-competitive eligibility in the chat box, that allows you access to federal government jobs that the rest of the population doesn't have the same access to. It doesn't guarantee you a job. You still have to qualify and interview. But I have a friend who is now, she uses non-competitive eligibility, and she's tracking human trafficking for the Department of Labor. Who knew that that job existed? And she had a social research background, but she couldn't get traction, got that status, and now was able to parlay that into a career. Another friend who is now, she's an inspector for the EPA doing compliance inspections of factories. And again, she says her whole career depended on going into the Peace Corps and getting that non-competitive eligibility. So I wanted to point that out first. Graduate school benefits. There are 224 graduate school programs at over 100 universities that offer partial to full scholarships for returned Peace Corps volunteers. Graduate schools know that Peace Corps volunteers have been through something. I went to a seminar recently of medical school students who'd come out of the Peace Corps, 6 of them, and one of the questions asked to the panel was, what helped you get into medical school, having been in Peace Corps? And all the panelists said, you know, my med school classmates think medical school stuff, and they laughed. It's like, you know, Peace Corps stuff. And admissions officers, they know that. I think we've talked about these other things. I would like to, I'm not quite sure, Stacy, did this move over to, are you seeing a web page now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is about a young man who's transitioning from the Peace Corps, Gabriel Cortez, to becoming a diplomat. And I will put this link in the chat. Hold a moment, please. And you can read about this itself, but it shows him in the Ukraine and with his fiance that he met while so there's a number of Peace Corps romances and marriages that happen. Anyway, that's something else to keep in mind. All right. This is another video on how the Peace Corps can help you with your career. I'm going to stop here for a second to let people download, to write this down or copy it out of the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, while we give people an opportunity to do that, George, I do have a question. What is something, as a returned volunteer, what is something that you wish you would have known before you entered the Peace Corps that you think would have helped you with your transition?
Transition into the Peace Corps?
Mm-hmm.
That the tremendous amount of adaptability that was going to be necessary. You know, I've traveled a lot and I have a European wife and we speak a few languages, and the being in a rural Southeast Asian village where I was a foot taller than everyone else, and you know, women would come up to me in the marketplace. We lived at the center of 13 villages strung along a river, and they'd look around and say, "Where's your wife?" And I'd say, "She's at home." And they wanted to know how sick she was. Well, you know why? They'd never seen a man shopping before, right? And it was, and the sense of time is totally different. And there are cultural things that, wow, they were so different, and they pin your ears back. And again, I think I'd been in close to 40 countries before going into the Peace Corps, but being rural like that, where your neighbors might not know what the days of the week are, because that's just not a concept there. They know 2 days from now, but they don't know Friday. So that's really different. Yes, great questions. Please, Stacy, more questions that are helpful.
I think, and I would just kind of like bookend a comment. Working in career services for over 15 years now, kind of like the skills that you talk about that you would gain in the Peace Corps in the sense of adaptability and being flexible and problem solving and globalization are things that just can't be replaced easily through other college experiences. So it really is something that employers are going to look at in addition to graduate schools as an experience that really builds you as a very holistic person.
So going back to that medical school panel, one of the questions was, did it help you get into medical school? And every one of them said when they walked into the interview, the medical school professor said, you're the Peace Corps graduate. And it set them apart. Because there is a lot of failure in both of those things. There's a lot of things that don't work out well in the Peace Corps and things that don't work out well in medicine. And you need to be able to handle that. And the other thing is the Peace Corps moves you from where you are to a mature person, whether you like it or not. It's one of those things that, I'm sure the career services people on the line, you want to be able to go from how you think the world should be to actually adapting to the way it is. And you are helped by the Peace Corps, but you still have to cross that river yourself. And you're given a lot of skills to do that and resources of people to reach out to, but it's a growth situation. And you will also be doing, people are writing hundreds of thousands of dollars grants as Peace Corps volunteers and administering those grants. If they choose to do so, you won't get a chance to do that if you stay in the States with a job for a decade. Great.
Can you talk a little bit about the application process in the sense of, I know that with the Peace Corps and historically there's been a pretty long lead time that was needed. Is that still the case? Or how soon should someone apply if they're looking at wanting to do this?
If you want to go in 2021, you should apply now. And the application process would be helped tremendously by someone like me. Let me share something else, an early slide. Can you see this slide, Stacy? Stacy, do you see this slide? You're muted.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So in this application process, you open a web portal and you open an account, and the application takes about an hour and a half if you have all your ducks in a row. There are two big ducks, one being your resume and two being your motivation statement. And if you have those done, then it's a matter of uploading things. And we have someone on who has recently applied. If he wouldn't mind putting in the chat box, how long did it take the actual application once you had your resume put together and your motivation statement? When you apply, okay, 2 hours. So that's not bad. The Peace Corps, it is a federal government bureaucracy, and they say an hour. You can double that. Once you apply, then you are sent a health history form where you fill it out and send it back in. Then your application is reviewed. You are invited to an interview or not. That's step 4. If the interview goes well, then you receive an invitation. After the invitation, you need to go through medical and legal clearance to make sure that you are set to go. And then what's called onboarding in the States, and then departure. That could take, before COVID, anywhere from 3 months to 11 months. Now I cannot speak to that because we just don't know. Great, thank you.
George, this is Jason from Cornell again. We saw the slide that all Peace Corps volunteers were recalled March 2020. You said you've reopened St. Lucia. What has been the process from March until, or what have been some of the significant milestones and happenings from March until now? And what is the time frame and what's it look like for our other countries slated to reopen? And how does that affect the recruiting numbers in the coming months?
So there are multiple questions. I don't have a timeline for other countries. We just found out that about St. Lucia yesterday. We have multiple task forces, both in DC and in every country, evaluating whether to go back and how to go back. And so there are the milestones. I couldn't list them all off here, but there are medical professionals working for the Peace Corps in each of the 61 countries, and then epidemiologists here at home, and they have to sign off on the safety of going back. The US ambassador to each of those countries has to sign off on the Peace Corps going back, plus multiple other steps. And as you can imagine, the American ambassador in each of those countries has multiple responsibilities, and they have to be extremely sure that it is safe, both for the host country and for the Peace Corps volunteers to go back. There are countries that have cleared, but the regional medical hub has not cleared. So for instance, where I served, Bangkok was a regional medical hub, and surrounding countries, if there was a bigger issue, the Peace Corps volunteers would be medevaced to Bangkok. So Bangkok has to be safe. And by the way, Bangkok, Thailand has only had 58 deaths out of 70 million people. They have been extremely good with COVID-19 because of their ability to handle infectious diseases. Jason, did I answer all your questions? I'm not sure. I lost track.
No, that's right. Yeah, and part of that was a flurry of questioning there. But yeah, I think you covered some really good information about guidelines and numbers for as precautions for reopening. So just to clarify then, so St. Lucia will be the first country to receive volunteers since March.
That is correct.
That's okay. And then is there like one next country slated, or is it just Santa Lucia and we'll stay tuned?
It's Santa Lucia and stay tuned, and it's trying to quash the rumor mill, and I don't know. It hasn't been shared with me at my level, and it's it's an agency level decision with
Sure.
with the CDC.
Okay, and a lot of our students who consider the Peace Corps, and possibly students on the call right now, may also consider and look at the Fulbright program as well. Does the department is the department following the same guidelines for Peace Corps and Fulbright, or are those two different decision-making bodies?
Those are two different decision-making bodies and two different agencies.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So I will say one thing. A professor at Coe College told me when he has students that get accepted to Peace Corps and Fulbright, he recommends that they take Peace Corps because of this return volunteer network of 250,000 that help people move along through their careers. And it's something that you can check into and make work for you.
Awesome. I am right now, really quick, George, I'm going to unmute everyone in the meeting just in case they didn't have the opportunity to do that, so that they can go ahead and ask a question.
Oh, please.
Well, I thought I was going to do that, but maybe I'm not going to be able to do that. Yes, so people who are not able to unmute themselves have been unmuted. So does anyone have any questions that they want to share with George at this time?
I would recommend that people go on to the peacecorps.gov website and explore different areas. You can also go on to and just see vlogs and blogs, unofficial, and get a full picture of people who are critical of the Peace Corps so that you know what it is going in.
I think the other thing to kind of just wrap up, if we don't have any other questions, George, you shared your contact information on the screen. Would it be your recommendation that a student who is interested in the Peace Corps or has any additional questions reaches out to you directly?
Yes, that you improve your chances by over 50% talking to someone like me, just because we know certain things, and the viewer that's online, I don't know, we talk to each other 2-3 times, and many times I talk much longer to people to what to highlight on their resume, and often people have experiences that we look for that they don't realize. Other employers would not look for those experiences, but if you have been the receptionist at a women's shelter, for example, that's huge for us, and it might not be for a more traditional employer.
And I guess I would just make a comment and encourage anybody who's on the conference right now, or people who will be recording this at a later date, that you wouldn't need to wait until you were ready to apply to talk to someone like George. Even if you're a first-year student and you're just interested in doing the Peace Corps at some time in your time, it would be a great idea to just reach out to him and get more information about what are the good things for you to know.
Can I interrupt there? Another thing is that you can't outthink this coronavirus and how the world is going to reopen. And you really need to cast a lot of lines in the water and see where the fish bite. And you just can't decide beforehand, oh, do I want to do the Peace Corps? If it takes such a short amount of time and you're interested, apply and then see what happens. And the same is true with graduate school and other jobs. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. Stacy, sorry I interrupted.
No, so we do have one more question in the chat, and that is, can you choose where you want to serve at?
Okay, that's a great question, and I would like to reshare my screen real quickly. Share screen. Stacy, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, we're seeing a web browser, yep.
Okay, so this is peacecorps.gov. And I'm going to hover over a volunteer and go down to volunteer openings. So there are two broad categories. There are a bunch of individual jobs, youth development volunteer South America, for example, or English education volunteer Eastern Europe and Central Asia. That's a broad category. Then there's the category of serve where you are needed most. So if you want to be specific, it used to be business advising volunteer Guinea, but since COVID-19, we've had to just change it to a continent. Your chances improve really if the more flexible you are. So yes, you can apply to specific regions now, but the more flexible you are, DC headquarters is going to use that flexibility to put you in different places. It increases your chances of getting in. Thank you.
Certainly, if you have additional interest in the Peace Corps, we would encourage you to reach out to George directly and kind of ask some of those questions. He's going to be a great resource for you from the perspective of he's the regional rep for our area, but he also is a return volunteer, so he can really provide you with what that kind of experience would look like. So with that being said,
the best way to contact me is by email, suggesting 4 or 5 times that you can meet with me, and I will try to fit one of those into my schedule.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I really want to thank George for joining us today and providing this information. This information is going to be recorded and sent out to the consortium. So if you had friends who wanted to attend but were unable to, that recording should be available in just a day or two.